It's not the king, not the temple, the serpent. That choice is deliberate because the serpent is the Old Testament figure that already forces a question of meaning. A serpent can be judged as death or recognized as life. A serpent can be rejected as a curse or trusted as the place where God has bound his word. The difference is never in the object, it's always in the interpretation. Jesus tells Nicodemus the same logic now applies to him. The issue is not merely that the Son of Man will be lifted up, but how he will be lifted and by what word. He will be lifted up under a verdict. He will be raised by a reading of Scripture that calls him cursed, rejected, and destroyed. And Nicodemus, as a teacher of Israel, must decide whether that verdict is true. Okay. Jesus is telling him this, in effect. If you truly understand the Scriptures you claim to teach, you would see that Messiah must be lifted up in a way that looks like failure. You would confront the texts that speak not only of Messiah's glory, but of his humiliation, rejection, and death. You would recognize that the cross is not an interruption of God's plan, but the very place where the prophetic word is brought into crisis. Nicodemus's problem is not lack of intelligence. It's refusal to bear the burden of the prophetic word. To accept that burden would mean relinquishing a Messiah who confirms status, power, and religious control. It would mean accepting a Messiah who is judged under the law's surface reading, treated as a curse, and rejected by the very people who claim to defend God's truth. If Nicodemus were honest with the text, God would be exalted through him. He would lift Messiah before the world, not as the Messiah he prefers, but as the Messiah Scripture demands, raised as a Ness, rejected as cursed, and vindicated only afterward. Only after the false verdict is exposed does exaltation follow. Only after the serpent is judged wrongly does life become visible. Only after the cross is called a curse does it become the place where God is truly revealed.